WNBA, as you know. They're calling for players in the WNBA are calling for more money. They 9%, I believe, accordingly. They get 9% of total revenue compared to roughly 50% of the revenue of NBA players. Should they be getting a larger share of the revenue in the WNBA?
Yes. I mean, I think the share isn't the right way to look at it because there's so much more revenue in the NBA. I think you should look at it in absolute numbers in terms of what they're making, and they are going to get a big increase in this cycle of collective bargaining, and they deserve it.
Many still perceive this league as adverse to substantial financial investment, believing its growth potential is capped and its traditions sacrosanct, which appears rather quaint given that a significant disruptive event has just unfolded. A decision previously deemed impossible has been sanctioned, accompanied by financial figures whispered with a sense of impropriety. Suddenly, those who championed a patient approach to growth are scrambling for an escape. The crucial question isn't about who received payment, but rather who lost authority, and why this fundamentally alters everything.
I've heard her in the past go on record and talk about money and her expectation and her hope that she makes enough money to build a house somewhere. The tone that she took had some people pessimistic about whether she would be returning to the Fever. But we can see from here that her mentality is not that she is going to be leaving. She is going to get plenty of money because of the nature of the CBA that is being negotiated. In the last CBA, she was making about a half-max contract, just over $100,000 per year.
The WNBA dedicated years to cultivating an image of stability, expansion, and invincibility, only to inexplicably mishandle the single most critical factor it could not afford to bungle.
The epic fumble of all fumbles is the WNBA fumbling this entire Caitlin Clark situation. It is absolutely a travesty and embarrassing. I didn't even see this Lexi Brown and Joy Taylor situation. I've posted plenty of things with Lexi Brown. Lexi Brown was one of the people that admitted Caitlin Clark was targeted by WNBA players. She admitted that there was a level of hostility toward Caitlin Clark that was not toward any other player.
While the league was caught up in self-congratulation over its progress, the rest of the sports world quietly observed a masterclass in undervaluing a golden asset until a richer, more vocal, and significantly less patient contender arrived. Checkbook in hand and a knowing smirk.
When she announced she was going pro, I immediately ran over to Lynn Dunn and said, "We have Elvis." She's like, "What?" I said, "There's been a lot of singers in music. There's only one Elvis. This is Elvis." And I knew, I've been in sports for 40 years. I knew this was something special. There's moving the needle. She's the needle. And I say it, there's been no one like her in.
Many held the conviction that the existing system was effective, that the league's star talent had cemented its momentum, and that Caitlin Clark's sole responsibility was to maintain a pleasant demeanor, absorb any challenges, and express gratitude. This particular outlook, however, has proven to be as perishable as dairy products, left out on a scorching Phoenix sidewalk in mid-July.
Female bird. She had Van Slugenhagen on her. She was like, "I'm offended that y'all have white defensive players guarding me," and she put her in the torture chamber. You should have known from her little face that she didn't want this matchup from the beginning. Caitlin reminds me of what Dame does. If anybody ever noticed, her first shot, always a three. First quarter, second quarter, third. She sets the distance on her first shot, so you have to guard her there. Now she can do whatever she wants to do. She's playing a chess game. That's what Dame does. He starts his game off, he's gonna shoot a deep-ass three to force you to guard her from there.
When your most compelling attraction endures physical punishment akin to a rented vehicle and travels commercially, all while carrying the entirety of your league's relevance, you are not cultivating a sustainable future, you are in essence conducting a clearance sale. Caitlin Clark didn't merely join the WNBA, she thrust it into conversations it had pursued for decades. Previously rare, sold-out arenas became the new standard, and television ratings no longer required convoluted explanations. Merchandise moved at such an unprecedented pace that it unnerved executives, as demand starkly exposed the profound inadequacies of the existing infrastructure. She converted casual viewers into dedicated followers and skeptics into ticket buyers, accomplishing all of this while earning a salary that would scarcely cover parking fees at some NBA venues. Then there's Sophie Cunningham, whose role in this unfolding narrative has been remarkably misconstrued. Many insist professional sports are solely about statistical performance, dismissing personality, marketability, and audience connection as mere trivialities. Sophie, however, brings an essential combination of grit, widespread visibility, and a personal brand that transcends the basketball court. She ignites discussions, elicits strong reactions, and drives engagement, qualities that leagues often spend millions on consultants to artificially generate. Pairing her with Caitlin Clark creates more than just talent. It forms a dynamic, self-propagating media spectacle.
Any other rookies from the pages, none of them dealt with the things that Caitlin had to deal with. And Lexi Brown admitted it. Now we have them, she makes it very clear. She's dealt with Nafisa Collier. She's been a teammate of hers. And these players, rather than getting a deal done, they are more focused on getting Cathy Engelbert fired. And this whole thing is backfiring on these players to the point where they couldn't even get a response from the owners. The owners are saying, let's move on free agency.
Now, the situation begins to grow uncomfortable for the WNBA, because while it maintained a pretense of everything being under control, Adam Silver was far from disengaged. He had no need for grand pronouncements or posturing. His strategy merely involved observing the data, monitoring the unfolding chaos, and recognizing a familiar pattern that had historically led to the downfall of other leagues. When organizations resist evolution, market forces do not wait politely. They correct with disruptive intensity. The league's primary directive was to safeguard the athletes propelling its progress. Instead, it allowed deep-seated resentment to masquerade as healthy competition and organizational disarray to be interpreted as toughness. Caitlin Clark endured fouls that appeared less like legitimate defensive plays and more like an unspoken hazing ritual. Officiating decisions ranged from inconsistent at best to outright dismissive at worst. Fans took notice, casual observers were aware, and critically, investors paid close attention. When the product begins to exhibit instability, capital inevitably seeks more secure avenues. That alternative, it turned out, was exceptionally well-funded and profoundly serious. The emergence of reports detailing contracts for Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham that made WNBA salaries seem trivial was not a shock. It was the predictable outcome. You cannot perpetually suppress market value without facing repercussions. The truly astonishing aspect was the minimal resistance the league seemed capable of offering once those staggering figures entered the discourse.
Even if she gets not a single percentage more than that, she is going to be making at least $500,000 a year under the new CBA. She may be making more than that, depending on the CBA that they finally settle upon. But it's not going to be anything that she's not going to be able to fulfill all of her financial desires with. To say nothing of her participation in Project B, which is going to give her at least $2 million for a
$50 million does not engage in negotiations with $76,000. It merely dismisses it, offers a condescending pat, and extends an invitation to join the journey. Adam Silver didn't need to exert any effort to decimate the WNBA's negotiating leverage. He simply permitted reality to run its course. The NBA's operational model inherently prioritizes protecting its stars, implementing equitable revenue sharing, and maximizing visibility. Having learned through harsh experience that exceptional talent gravitates toward environments offering the best treatment. When a system openly permits the undervaluation of its most significant assets, it broadcasts a clear message to the world that those assets are available. And indeed, they are. Other organizations aren't approaching Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham out of benevolence or mere curiosity. They perceive a significant advantage. They observe a league struggling to justify its own regulations while demanding that its stars indefinitely sacrifice for an elusive promise of future growth that always seems just one season away. They see athletes whose names command global engagement, yet whose working conditions echo the modest reality of a local minor league. This glaring disparity is not an issue for external investors. It represents a substantial opportunity. The WNBA attempted to champion patience as a virtue, while others offered concrete benefits such as ownership stakes, equity, and genuine respect. It framed modest compensation as a temporary inconvenience, whereas competitors presented multi-million-dollar contracts as mere starting point. One party sought loyalty, the other proposed private travel, extensive global exposure, and generational financial security. The comparison is unequivocally clear, regardless of how much tradition one attempts to invoke.
It's the NBA Commissioner, Adam Silver, who appeared on the Today Show in New York earlier this week, speaking out.
So in an exclusive, anchor Craig Melvin asked the commissioner what he thought about players in the WNBA demanding more money and whether they should have a larger. Yes, they do deserve it. I mean, it is ridiculous how less they make than women or than men. So the collective bargaining agreement between.
Herein lies the true genius of Adam Silver's subtle yet profound influence. He understands that competition isn't thwarted by ignoring its existence, but by ensuring your own offering is robust and resilient. The WNBA, conversely, acted in a manner that exposed its internal discord, inconsistent leadership, and an inherent reluctance to adapt swiftly enough to maintain its hard-won momentum. When Stephen A. Smith repeatedly voiced his concerns, it was simple to dismiss his commentary as mere noise. In retrospect, he was narrating a slow-motion unraveling. This is because the instant athletes recognize they have alternatives. The power dynamic shifts irrevocably. Silence itself transforms into strategy, and non-denial becomes a powerful form of leverage. Each day, the league avoids directly addressing these competing offers. It projects an aura of uncertainty. Every time Caitlin Clark boards a commercial flight while simultaneously generating millions, it reinforces the notion that unwavering loyalty is being conflated with mere obligation. Every unaddressed foul and every downplayed controversy provides another compelling reason for players to heed the call of rival organizations. The WNBA now confronts the alarming realization that it doesn't genuinely command its own future. It borrowed relevance from Caitlin Clark, operating under the assumption she would never reclaim it. It presumed players would continue to tolerate inadequate compensation, a belief rooted in historical constraint. That premise disintegrated the moment external organizations demonstrated a willingness to construct something entirely new rather than merely seek entry into a system that was clearly faltering. Adam Silver did not actively dismantle the WNBA through intervention. He merely shattered the illusion of its immunity to competition, thereby exposing the profound fragility of its existing structure by simply allowing market forces to operate unhindered.
Because you got Caitlin Clark and everybody's excited. You got money. Now, here's the deal when it gets real interesting. And you start talking about money because you got the Kansas City Commission, right? And Adam Silver, you open up a can of worms is bigger than he could do, right? Because you got now a situation where the WNBA, okay, there's not going to be a 90% revenue split anymore, right?
A league that fails to protect its star athletes cannot reasonably expect their unwavering allegiance. A system incapable of fairly compensating its most valuable players cannot feign surprise when those players explore opportunities elsewhere. Should the two most marketable figures in women's basketball decide to leave, the established narrative would instantly flip. The WNBA would cease to be viewed as the ultimate destination and would instead appear as a mere stepping stone. Once this perception takes hold, reversing it becomes almost impossible. Leagues thrive and perish based on the belief that they represent the pinnacle of their sport. Lose that foundational belief, and you lose leverage with everyone involved. The irony is particularly painful. The league finally attained everything it had long desired: attention, viewership, cultural prominence, and significant buzz. Yet, it treated this success as an obstacle rather than a blessing, attempting to manage stardom instead of fully embracing it. Now, it observes from the sidelines as others extend the very opportunities it chose not to prioritize. Caitlin Clark's departure isn't necessary to underscore this point. The mere possibility of it has already irrevocably altered the landscape. Sophie Cunningham needn't sign with another entity to expose the underlying flaws. Her involvement alone illuminates the true operational mechanics of modern sports economics. Together, they embody a future that the WNBA inadvertently helped create, but now seems incapable of sustaining. Adam Silver grasped this pivotal moment well before the league did. He didn't utter a single word. The dismantling transpired subtly through stark contrasts, superior competence, and the uncomfortable awakening that someone else is always prepared to do what you will not.
I'm here to tell you, man, it ain't looking good for Caitlin Clark 2026 season. Now, I know a lot of y'all been kind of mad about me saying these things I've been saying about the WNBA, which is fine. It's fine, the things I've been saying about Caitlin Clark hype. I just want to be transparent with y'all because when the fall come, it's going to hit hard for everybody. I just got to keep it real. You know, look, I will take one for the team. And that's what I've been doing in the WNBA genre. Because I've been putting y'all on notice with everything that has been happening.
The WNBA mistakenly believed it had abundant time, operating under the assumption that growth could be a slow, controlled, and internally managed process. It failed to remember that exceptional talent does not wait for systems to catch up. Now, the offers are unequivocally real. The league's silence is profoundly telling, and a subtle yet undeniable sense of alarm permeates the atmosphere. The organization, which once presumed it held all the cards, is discovering that the deck has been entirely reshuffled without its permission. The forthcoming decisions will not merely determine where Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham continue their basketball careers. They will decide whether the WNBA retains its central position in women's basketball or becomes a cautionary tale studied by others on how to squander future potential while celebrating current achievements. This is the crucial point where the WNBA realizes its problem is no longer hypothetical, theoretical, or something that can be resolved with a carefully phrased press release and a promise to review policies during the offseason. Because once athletes begin to be actively presented with genuine alternatives, not minor development leagues or supplementary endeavors, but comprehensively funded, globally marketed, and star-centric operations, the balance of power shifts permanently. That bell cannot be unrung. You cannot pretend the market hasn't spoken when its voice articulates in eight-figure sums. What exacerbates the damage is the undeniable predictability of it all. The warning signs were not faint whispers, they were flashing needs. A rookie arrives and instantly becomes the primary reason people tune in. Yet she is treated as a disruption instead of an invaluable asset. Another player brings distinct charisma, personality, and brand recognition, yet the league expresses surprise when external investors immediately acknowledge that inherent value. This isn't external sabotage. It is a self-inflicted erosion from within.
That there are things we need to do with our you have son who plays basketball. I think there are things we need to do about youth development here. There are aspects of the international game, especially in terms of young players, boys and girls, that frankly is just better than what we're doing in the U.S. right now.
What'd you say?
200,000
That's a disgrace. Asia Wilson should be making $10 million a year.
Caitlin's she's still on her rookie contract.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like
70 to 80,000.
I never knew this.
Yeah.
Indeed, Adam Silver's understanding of public perception is almost unparalleled in modern sports. He recognizes that leagues don't crumble from a single poor choice. They collapse because they stubbornly adhere to outdated frameworks while refusing to acknowledge a changing world. The WNBA sought to safeguard its existing structure over protecting its stars, and in doing so, ironically rendered that very structure appear vulnerable. Once that perception takes hold, capital rapidly reorients, and loyalty transitions from an intrinsic value to a negotiable term. The league now finds itself in a predicament where every action it takes seems reactive rather than authoritative. A sudden increase in salaries would betray panic, a more aggressive enforcement of player protection would appear to be mere damage control, and maintaining silence would project weakness. No advantageous solution remains, because the window for proactive leadership quietly closed, somewhere between overlooked fouls and sold-out venues that were dismissed as anomalies, instead of clear evidence of immense potential. Meanwhile, the prospect of Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham receiving offers from other organizations no longer shocks fans. It feels entirely logical, as if gravity is simply running its course. When a system cannot adequately keep pace with the value it generates, that value inevitably migrates, not out of malice, but out of self-preservation. Athletes have brief careers but enduring memories. They do not forget who supported them when influence truly mattered. And this is where the WNBA's deepest fears take root. Because if merely two payers can destabilize its foundations so profoundly, imagine the upheaval when others begin to fully comprehend their own market worth. Envision younger players observing these events and realizing that the ceiling they were promised might not actually exist.
Caitlin Clark hype. Told y'all how the Indiana Fever messed up her shot. The reason why she was hurt was because of them adding all that muscle. Y'all gotta go back and look, bruh. But it's cool. I take one for the team. Now, with that being said, I told y'all the funeral was coming. The WNBA might be over with, at least for the foreseeable future. That is because they want all this money that they do not have. And I hate to say this because I love Caitlin Clark so much. And for those of y'all always wondering, Caitlin Clark poster is still back.
Consider the ramifications as sponsors increasingly realize their allegiance lies with individual personalities rather than just team logos. The league risks not only losing its star players, but also relinquishing control over its entire narrative. Adam Silver never had to directly attack the WNBA. He simply allowed a compelling comparison to emerge, and such comparisons are merciless when one side appears thoroughly prepared while the other seems perpetually on the defensive. One perspective recognizes that the stars themselves are the marketable product. The other still treats them as mere interchangeable components within a system that must not deviate from established tradition. That fundamental difference alone possesses the power to reallocate billions. The immediate consequences will not initially be dramatic. They will unfold in closed-door meetings, in subtle shifts in contract language, and in travel arrangements that suddenly appear unacceptable once more appealing options become visible. It will materialize as continued silence is chosen over clear refutations, and by the time any official news surfaces, the damage will already be irreversible. This is because the ingrained belief that the WNBA is the sole legitimate stage will have evaporated. This constitutes the true obliteration, not a public condemnation, not a viral controversy, not a dramatic confrontation, but the quiet realization that the league's leverage depended entirely on its players believing they had no other viable pathways. That crucial belief has now vanished. Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham do not even need to depart for this message to resonate. The message has already been powerfully delivered. The WNBA aimed for cautious, measured growth, but the market demanded swift action, and Adam Silver inherently understood which force always prevails in such a conflict. Now, the league must determine whether it can rebuild trust, reevaluate its value proposition, and modernize with sufficient speed to retain its future talent, or if it will merely watch from the sidelines as others complete the work it initiated, but proved incapable of managing. Because the uncomfortable truth is this: the WNBA didn't lose control because someone seized it. It lost control because it refused to acknowledge the immense power its own stars had accumulated. And once that power becomes undeniably visible, it can never be suppressed.